You're listening to the Dynamic Thinking Project podcast. This is episode 8, and today we are going to talk about a very interesting and strange phenomenon, that is Deja Vu, and also other related phenomena. Hey everyone, Adam Muselli here. Welcome to the Dynamic Thinking Project podcast. You can also follow me on Twitter and Facebook. All links are in the show notes and website, themindtechinstitute.com. It's all one word. And now, let's get started. Before we get into Deja Vu and what science, parapsychology, and philosophy has to say about it, I want you to ask yourself something. Have you ever gotten that strange and unsettling feeling of you've been in an exact situation or place before? It's sort of like an overwhelming sense of familiarity with something that you shouldn't even be familiar with at all. You're certain you've been there, but you don't know when or how that situation or place became so familiar to you. And it's the sensation that what is happening to you at that very moment has happened to you before, perhaps on a day you've forgotten or in a dream, or if you believe in such things such as alternate universe or reality, or even previous lives. While doctors and scientists try to explain that sensation as neurological anomaly, other more spiritual people claim that Deja Vu is you're actually tapping into your experiences of other previous lives or temporarily accessing your shared consciousness of all of the other yous, that's the plural of you, in an infinite number of alternate universes, or better say, multiverses. Now, this phenomenon is called Deja Vu. Deja Vu is a French word which literally means already seen. It's a sensation that billions of people experience as that something we are experiencing at the moment has happened before, whether it's just a single element such as a taste or a sight or a sound or even an entire sequence of events. Additionally, while certain cultures and groups claim that Deja Vu is evidence of future sight, precognitions, and prophecies. Of course, the scientific community rejects those theories and instead explains that it's an anomaly of memory in which an experience is being recalled, but actually a brand new experience for the person. Another explanation states that the cause of Deja Vu maybe it's something in psychology and psychiatry is called cryptomnesia, which is when information is forgotten but still stored in the brain only to reveal itself as a new and original thoughts just later on. And that's because since the brain processes 4 billion bits of information per second, but we are only aware of 2,000 bits of those information consciously. So at any given time, 1 bit or maybe more of those 400 billion bits, which you were not aware of consciously, but as stored in your conscious mind now, revealed itself, or if it's more revealed themselves, as an original thought, and thus gave you that feeling as its repeated event or experience. Now, keep in mind that this whole process takes a second or less, which is almost impossible for the conscious mind to detect or notice. And of course, this experience will compound the feeling of confusion, as when you feel confused when you experience that déjà vu, and that might raise your adrenaline levels, which may also cause the feeling of fear or paranoia. Now, that's a whole different topic though. And I'll be publishing a whole episode about paranoia very soon. Okay, so who experiences déjà vu? Well, a study done in 2004 discovered that over 65% of people experience déjà vu. That's almost 2/3 of all humanity. While anyone can feel the odd effects, there seems to be a particular correlation between individuals with temporal lobe epilepsy who experience improper electrical discharges, as we will know more about that later. Additionally, certain pharmaceutical drugs such as amantadine and phenylpropanolamine, or better known as PPA, which I don't think it's available anymore in cold and flu tablets. That's due to proposed risks of stroke in younger women. I just remember some issues with the FDA and PPA a few years ago. But anyway, amantadine and phenylpropanolamine PPA can also increase the frequency and intensity of the feeling that you're repeating a moment or experience from your life. Déjà vu is a common intuitive feeling, and as study shows that it happened to around 60 to 70% of people, and it occurs more frequently to people between the ages of 15 and 25. Déjà vu is always rather a complex phenomenon, and like many unusual phenomena involving the brain, it has yet to be fully understood, and there is much speculations as to how and why this phenomenon occurs with too many people. So it's difficult to scientifically study déjà vu because there's no reliable way to cause it to happen in people's head in a laboratory to test it and to study it. But here's what we do know about it so far. You see, since humans don't seem to experience déjà vu until they are at least 8 or 9 years old, and it's most frequent in the teens and 20s, and then it becomes less frequent as we get older. So it might have something to do with the brain development. However, parapsychologists say that this phenomenon occurs when things and experiences from our past lives merge with our present life, and they back up that claim by saying that people start to recall their past lives between the ages 7 to mid-20s, and then they become adjusted to their present life. Now, do I deny past lives? I don't deny anything until it's proven otherwise. So I keep an open mind. I mean, we teach hypnotherapy, and I have a lot of stories about past lives. Is it real? Is it the cause of someone's imagination? Well, it's not my call. All I know is the therapy works, and that's all I know. And that's all I need when I'm doing therapy. So it's not the argument here if there is past lives or not, but parapsychologists, they believe that déjà vu is related to past lives and merging between those two lives, as in remembering part of their past lives and it's merging into the present. Now, on the other hand, several psychoanalysts attribute to the phenomenon as it's not more than just a simple fantasy and wish fulfillment of our desires and dreams. And then there is the psychological standpoint, which generally considers déjà vu to be caused by a memory mismatch. That in turn causes people to feel like that. They've already experienced a specific event that they know is completely new to them, and it occurs because of the communication issue between the short-term and long-term memory, which is a rare occurrence that functions something like a circuit breaker. Although the actual cause of déjà vu has yet to be confirmed by science. So all that is just speculations. Also, there are many different theories that attempt to explain how it happens, and each have interesting implications for this phenomenon, and try to get to the bottom of this psychological mystery. Now, here are some theories that have been proposed to explain déjà vu. One theory suggests that déjà vu is caused by memory failing to form correctly in the brain history, and that is called dual processing. And it's the most widely accepted theory in this mystery phenomena amongst psychologists. The dual processing theory is based on the way the human brain processes information and how it stores short-term and long-term memories. Essentially, the theory holds that déjà vu happens when two cognitive processes are momentarily out of sync. In 1963, Robert Ephraim at the Veterans Hospital in Boston tested this proposed idea that a delayed neurological response is what causes déjà vu according to him. Because information enters the processing centers of the brain via more than a signal path, it is likely that there are instances that the information might not synchronize correctly. And the testing history, not only did he find the temporal lobe of the brain's left hemisphere to be responsible for storing incoming information, he also discovered that the temporal lobe received this incoming information twice, with milliseconds long delay between transmission. The information arrives once directly and a second time after it is detoured through the right hemisphere of the brain, should the second transmission get delayed by just slightly longer. Then the brain might put a later time stamp on that information and consider it as a different memory from the previous memory, which is already processed by the first transmission. This neurological delay is what could possibly explain the sudden sense of familiarity people feel on certain experiences. Another theory suggests that déjà vu could be triggered by things that we have seen subliminally, but they just haven't been registered on the conscious level yet. This is called divided attention. We teach that in hypnotherapy and hypnosis, by the way. This theory relies on the inability to focus on all the things at once, which means it has the tendency to momentarily forget about other actions or events that are happening in real time. Stage hypnotists, they use this divided attention when they're using their stunts and gimmicks. Another theory is the hologram theory. A Dutch psychiatrist, Herman Snow, proposed the idea that memories are like holograms, which means that the person can reconstruct the entire three-dimensional image from any fragment of the whole image or memory. But since human memories are so interlinked with each other, that experiencing a signal fragment isn't enough for a person's brain to reconstruct an entire multi-sensory memory. And the smaller the fragment that you remember, the fuzzier it will be. For example, if you just smell something and that seems familiar and makes you have déjà vu, you don't have the whole picture, but your mind begins to construct a three-dimensional image based on that. However, as I would love déjà vu to be based on the idea of alternate multiverses and the hologram universe theory and precognition, as I am a big fan of quantum physics as well as parapsychology and the unknown mysteries, but I have another theory which I guess it gets to the bottom of this phenomenon. It is scientific, but let's keep an open mind, as this theory seems to be the closest to home. And for the sake of simplicity, let's begin with the visual system. Now, as the brain, I want you to use your imagination now. As the brain sits in your head and the eyeballs are at the front of your head seeing things. Now, when your eyes are seeing things, that will send signals to the back of the brain, which is the optical lobe, where the visual cortex is, which is at the very back of your head. That's where the images are processed and we become aware of what we're seeing. But the visual cortex isn't the first stop that information makes. Instead, we know that it stops in lots of other places before it gets to the visual cortex. For instance, the amygdala, which is the lower middle part of the brain, and each person has 2 amygdalae. The amygdala is responsible for emotions, for survival instincts, and also memory. And where the images here may be processed at an involuntary emotional level. Also, the tectum, it's involved in preliminary visual processing and helps control eye movements. What is the tectum? The tectum is responsible for auditory, which is sound, and visual reflexes. Now, that fact is incredibly important because what it means is that people with blindness caused by damage to the visual cortex cannot see anything. They don't report seeing or recognizing anything. However, the other preliminary parts of the brain that gets that message are still healthy. And so, despite being, let's say, legally blind, these people exhibit what is known as blind sight. They can defy all odds and avoid an obstacle course on the ground. So, a lot is going on when we look at things. And don't forget that the brain processes 400 billion bits of information per second. But we are only aware of 2,000 information consciously out of the 400 billion bits. So there is a lot going on, and if those preliminary structures in the vision system allow certain blind people to be oddly and unconsciously aware of what they are looking at, we may have the ingredients we need for this disconnect. Think of it this way. If I experience event A, and then B, and then C, and the inner parts of my brain committed to memory and generate an emotional response, but then a fraction of a second later, those emotional responses go out of sync. My visual cortex finally gets around to telling me the conscious aware part of my brain or what I'm seeing. It will say, okay, Adam, we're looking at A and then B and then the brain will say, whoa, wait a second. And then C, right? That's already happened, I thought. And that may be déjà vu. But what could cause these processes dealing with the same information to get temporarily out of sync like that? Well, probably a neurological abnormality, possibly an epileptic episode where neurons all fire in sync. We also know that patients who experience chronic and persistent déjà vu tend to have brain damage in the temporal lobe of their brain. These lobes are on each side of the brain. Well, when I experience déjà vu, should I panic and run to the doctor right away and to do some MRIs on my brain or? Well, not at all. In fact, minor epileptic events are quite common. You've been probably experienced a similar phenomenon known as a hypnagogic jerk. That's a fancy name for what happens when you're about to fall asleep and then all of a sudden you feel like you're falling or that you tripped, and your body jolts itself awake, and you wake up the next day to find your partner next to you has a black eye. Oops, you just elbowed your partner in the eye. Well, okay, let's go back to the topic. What's going on there is that you fell asleep, your muscles relax, and some part of your brain that's still awake notices that and feels like you're no longer supported. You must be falling. And that sends out a huge signal that causes all of your muscles to twitch, waking you up. And that sense is called equilibrioception, as you remember from episode 3. By the way, Deja vu is not the only vu out there. There is still something known as presque vu, or tip of the tongue. And this is what happens when you're familiar with something. You know it, but at that moment, at that very moment, you cannot recall it. It's like when you say, what's that actor's name from that movie? I've seen it like 20 times. How can I not remember it? One explanation of how that happens is that other words similar to the target word are being remembered. And to help you out, your brain is actively blocking other things around it, including the word you're actually looking for or trying to remember. Also, there is another common vu experience is jamais vu. It's the opposite of déjà vu. Instead of feeling extra familiar, things seem totally unfamiliar with the jamais vu. In this case, there is too little connection between long-term memory and perceptions of the present. When a person is in this state, nothing they can experience seems to have anything to do with the past. They might be talking to a person they know very well, and suddenly the person seems totally unfamiliar. Their sense of knowing the person and knowing how to relate to them simply vanishes. For example, a room in which they spend a lot of time in suddenly becomes totally new. Everything seems new. Details they will have seen 1,000 times suddenly become engaging. The cause of jamais vu, as scientists believe, is also may relate to too many emotional responses collected from an experience. Could be visual, auditory, which is hearing, kinesthetic, which is feeling, olfactory, which is smelling, gustatory, which is tasting, and maybe all or few of them get fired up in the brain at the same time. And then, for a fraction of a second, goes out of sync, and thus causes the temporary confusion. Scientists also say if there is a certain word, name, or activity you keep saying or doing over and over again, jamais vu might also happen because continuing to excite the neurons responsible for that experience causes them to become inhabited. And further use is less intense. Or in other words, they become lazy because it becomes less exciting to the brain. That's why we teach in our NLP training that change is always good and will keep things in order for you mentally and physically. It's just crazy to think that there is so much out there in the world and in the universe that we don't know and that we don't understand and we haven't yet discovered. But yet, that very feeling of familiarity for what we do know cannot be trusted. There are actually too many theories about déjà vu, with more and more coming out all the time. And at the end of the day, it's really up to you. Is it science or something more? Well, that's it for today, and thanks for listening. If you have any questions, you can email me. The email is on our website, themindtechinstitute.com. It's all one word. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, take care, and you have a good weekend.